When I was a kid, there was absolutely nothing I enjoyed more than losing myself in a great fantasy or science fiction book, the hours passing to a cadence of turning pages as I luxuriated in strange and exciting fictional worlds. As I got older, reading transitioned from a passion to an obligation. Being told what to read, when to read it, and what corresponding work to produce slowly but surely caused the very act of reading to become a chore, even when the subject matter was of genuine interest to me. Though I eventually began to establish clearer mental boundaries between reading for work and reading for fun, I found that somewhere along the way I'd hit another wall. The fantasy and science fiction genres no longer possess the magnetism they once did. A good fantasy novel intended for an adult audience proved quite difficult to find, so at some point, I just gave up. That feeling I'd experienced as a child, that very specific rush of dopamine that accompanied my joyful exploration of an imaginary universe, was something I feared I'd lost forever. That is, until I opened a door, stepped into the dim seclusion of the Lost Flower Garden, and beheld the gleaming branches of the gold coin tree during my first playthrough of Lies of P. In that moment, recognizing the tree as a literary reference that had been given a new and beautiful form, I was 12 years old again, gleefully poring over an anthology of myths and fairy tales, or starting a new book by one of my favorite YA authors. Strangely, however, it didn't feel as though my current preferences had taken a back seat. I remained in the mindset of an adult with darker and more refined tastes, and I knew I could count on Lies of P to continue delivering that somber, sinister content I craved, perhaps even in direct connection to the picturesque scene currently before me. Upon entering that courtyard, and on several subsequent occasions throughout the game, I accessed a state where my inner child and my present self could meet, coexist, and each be fully satisfied, all thanks to Lies of P's remarkable reimagining of familiar source material. As its title suggests, Lies of P is a game loosely based on Carlo Collodi's The Adventures of Pinocchio, a classic children's fantasy novel detailing the sometimes comedic, sometimes grim escapades of an autonomous marionette.
Want me to bean him with this?
No, perish the thought. Oh my.
The Souls-like RPG developed by NeoWiz and Round 8 Studio adopts Collodi's puppet protagonist and reconceptualizes his story within a bleaker and more industrialized context. Instead of wood, Pinocchio is made from synthetic materials and powered by a substance called ergo. Instead of Tuscany, the game is set in the fictional city of Krat, a once lively metropolis ravaged by a brutally violent puppet uprising and a deadly illness called the petrification disease. One of the game's most striking visual and thematic features is the juxtaposition of opulence and decadence with destruction and decay. As Pinocchio traverses the corpse-strewn streets and stately architecture of Krat, the backdrop often consists of marble floors slicked with blood, lavish drapes engulfed in flames, and the glitter of shattered windows, chandeliers, and bottles of wine. I thoroughly enjoyed these simultaneously gorgeous and unsightly settings, particularly because they made me wonder how I was meant to feel about Krat's downfall. Was the culture here something to be admired, condemned, or both? Why did some scenes evoke a perverse sort of satisfaction, while others elicited only sadness? Was I, as Pinocchio, part of the solution or the problem? In addition to serving as the catalyst for the game's main storyline, the puppet frenzy and its aftermath add a few welcome shades of gray to the more black and white morality of the adventures of Pinocchio. While there's plenty of magic in Lies of P, its emphasis on science, technology, and the way humankind weaponizes them causes the game to remain grounded in reality despite its many fanciful elements. Unlike in The Adventures of Pinocchio, the real enemies in Lies of P aren't sea monsters or mischievous talking animals. They're people. People driven by selfishness, grief, greed, blind loyalty, and reckless idealism. People who have seized the power offered by society's advancement and exploited it for their own purposes. By removing the constraints put in place for the benefit of Collodi's young readers, envisioning how the plot might extend beyond its original conclusion, and allowing immoral actions to have harsher, less isolated consequences, Lies of P creates a narrative that remains in the spirit of the original story while appealing more strongly to a mature audience. Another way Lies of P pays tribute to the adventures of Pinocchio is its inclusion of several secondary characters from the novel. Geppetto, Gemini, Sophia, Alidoro, the Red Fox, the Black Cat, and many other notable figures from the game are direct references to Collodi's work. Like Pinocchio, they've been refashioned to make sense within the game's updated setting. For example, the Red Fox and Black Cat aren't actually a fox and a cat. They're people who wear animal masks in the tradition of the Stalkers, Krat's organization of mercenaries. They're still con artists, and Pinocchio would be a fool to trust them fully, but they're also a bit more nuanced and sympathetic than their literary counterparts, which encourages the player to form their own opinions and interact with the pair accordingly. While Do Crimes Get Punished is a perfectly fine takeaway for a children's story, Lies of P is more interested in asking questions such as what crimes can be justified, and what are the limits of your empathy during encounters with these antagonists. Overall, what impressed me most about Lies of P is that it was clearly made with immense respect for its source material without ever feeling confined by it. Though the game alludes to the adventures of Pinocchio at every turn, it's still a brilliantly imaginative work of art with an identity all its own, combining the delight of discovery, the sentimentality of nostalgia, and the intrigue of mature subject matter seamlessly enough to create an experience that rivals even my fondest memories of reading.